we had some more people who registered, so
We can wait. It's okay.
okay. Uh,
If you want to, it's all up to you.
okay. Are there still people left in the waiting room or?
There now, I turned it off.
No. Okay. Because some may still join. We had 6 people who registered.
So I'm not sure if Adeline is going to join because it depends on if she's in the same building as I am, 2 stories below. But she might have some stuff is happening in the building right now. So I don't know if she's going to be able to join. Hopefully she will, but she might not.
Okay. Well, we can start with people present. Nice. Oh. And so we may start, as we have a few people, with a short tour de table where you can shortly say your name and affiliation. So the 2 other points on the agenda Ben already covered. So if you have something against it to be published after on the YouTube channel, let us know. But normally this session will then be recorded and posted. We can do some edits if there is anything you don't want to be on the YouTube channel after. So we can start with a tour de table. So maybe Rosa. Raza, can you introduce?
Okay, then I can, yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, then I can start. So as you can see, my name is Rassa Bukontaita. I'm representing Swedish Museum of Natural History, and I'm a coordinator for SBDI, which is standing for Swedish Biodiversity Infrastructure, Data Infrastructure. So yeah.
Okay, nice to
I don't know
meet
what else you would like me to say.
Yeah, we will do after the short presentation a more in-depth discussion on your needs and expectation. Jutta?
Hi, I'm Jutta. I'm an independent scientist, and I'm here representing IPDAS, International Partners for the Digital Extended Specimen. Thanks.
Thank you. Visoteri?
Hi, hello. So I'm Visoteri Hung. I'm working at the Paris Herbarium, and I'm a researcher, and I'm also Chadwick secretary.
Okay. Ben, if you want.
Sure. I'm Ben Norton. I do many things. I'm an independent in the United States, and I do lots of different tag activities and things.
Eli?
Hello, I'm Eli Saliba. I'm the Partnership Subcommittee Deputy Chair, and I work in the Paris Museum in the JB France team, basically.
Okay, so we finished. So Patricia Mergen, I'm working for the Maze Botanic Garden and the Royal Museum for Central Africa in Belgium. I'm the current chair of this partnership and fundraising subcommittee and been involved in TEDWIC for quite some time. So first the agenda. So can everyone see the presentation? So after this short tour de table, I will present a very short intro about the subcommittee. Then example of an existing memorandum of understanding about genomic biodiversity. Then Ali will present and explain the ongoing partnerships with the nomenclatural body. Then we will do a second, more extended tour de table where you can each give more feedback and let us know about your expectation, followed by more questions as needed. And then we will try to wrap up to see how we can continue with this group. So to set the scene, this is more a functional subcommittee, so it's different from other sessions you might have followed, where it's more about interest group and task groups linked to the standards and their developments and reflections. Here it's more a group that was set up to come as a support for the executive committee and what they have to deliver more as task and support to the community. But we identified some 10 years or more ago that they need more substantial efforts than just a regular executive meeting. So we formed different functional subcommittee groups. And the purpose of this one has two goals, fundraising and partnerships. So the fundraising part is more on finding funding, bits and other financial support for TEDWG, but also their interest groups and participants, like for example, grants to participate to the conferences and so on. But the focus of this session will be more on the partnership part, which is to better position the TEDWG in the international landscape and also better understand what are the needs and who are our stakeholders. So the focus on partnership in the subcommittee is to identify and engage with international organizations to strengthen TEDWG's visibility and activities on an international profile. We would also like to maintain a list of stakeholders that we can base on the alignment of our strategic interests. And also, after consulting and approval with the executive committee, we can also have more formal agreements, for example, in forms of memoranda of understanding or other non-legal binding collaborations that we can do with the different stakeholder associations. We prefer not to go into legally binding documents, as we found that this would be going a bit too far, and we don't want to go as far as needing to involve lawyers or any legal binding signatures and things like that. We would also like to assign representative for the participation in this kind of meetings from the different associations that we can regularly interact and discuss with. In terms of functioning, currently we are the chair and the deputy chair with Ellie present here. We are looking for additional members. So I started last year to be the chair of this group after quite some gap because of previous chair leaving and others unfortunately passing away. So we had to rethink a bit the group and start with a fresh mind. So what is sure is that we want to have a geographical balance. Ellie and myself are more on Europe. So we would be happy to have also people from other continents who maybe know the landscape better than us, and especially also in terms of funding body. So we would be happy if those members are also part of other international body, that they are familiar with their local fundraisers, that they have competences and activities in terms of networking. And an add-on is really if they have some skill in proposal writing and project management to help TEDWG to be part of some other funded projects or networks. Ideally, we would look for additional 5 to 7 members. We have not really a limit, but this would be good to have at least each continent and enough stakeholders represented. We plan to do meetings at least every 3 months, with other ad hoc bilateral meeting with stakeholder or association representative. And of course, if there is a MOU ongoing or if TEDWG is foreseen to be part of a submission for funding, there may be more of these ad hoc meetings. I put here the link where you can have more information on how to contact us and about the group in general. So now I pass to the next point, which is an example of an existing memorandum of understanding between TEDWG and the genomic biodiversity standards. So this group, the Genomic Standards Consortium, together with GGBN and other stakeholders, was working on a standard that was about data, but also going further on methods and field sampling and everything that is around genomics. And of course, in TEDWG, there were also extensions that you may know for molecular data like ABCD, DNA, or other standards as extensions to Darwin Core, material samples, eDNA, and so on. So at that time, we decided that we should not work in parallel, but together. And so we did agree on a memorandum of understanding that resulted in a joint working groups that is actually belonging to the two different standardization groups, TEDWG and the GCS, which is GBN and others. And you can also follow the links there, where we have now a common genomic biodiversity working groups with different task groups within TEDWG. So that's an example of a successful partnership. Then in further examples, of course, there are many who are using our standards. The best known is GBIF, but recently also European research infrastructure like DISCO on collections, LifeWatch more on field data, Expert, which is a tool that Paris has developed and knows well on determination keys, journals like PenSoft or the European Journal of Taxonomy, all refer to TEDWG standards and are using them, but without that we have really any written down MOU or formal agreement, but they are long-term collaborators where we can maybe revisit to set on paper and also on our website that this collaboration are more visible both for them and for TEDWG, so as a win-win situation to increase both visibility. We also organize joint conferences and sessions, as we know with Spinach, GBIF, GeoBon this year. Often we all have sessions from the Biodiversity Heritage Library, so that's also a way of having partnerships and collaborations that we could also try to formalize and put forward a bit more than only at the occasion of joint events. We also participate in others' interest groups and working groups, but for the moment it happens a bit in a fussy way, where we say, look here, we have the CETAF group on earth science, and we also have the standards in TEDWG, an extension on mineralogy and earth for geosciences and so on, where it would be good, and if these different working sessions and working groups exist, that in a more systematic way, we have people from TEDWG in those working groups and them also coming to our working groups to work hand in hand more prominently, and because we can see a lot of overlap and doubling efforts and sometimes the same issues that come back and again, while one of the other group has already found an interesting solution. So here it's really the communication part that has to be increased. And of course, we want to further extend the landscape and identify more stakeholders. So now I would like to pass the work to Ellie, who will say a few words about the ongoing nomenclatural bodies. And also he was recently elected in the International Commission of Zoological Nomenclature, which give him a good position to be both in TEDWG and there to put this forward. Thank you. You have the word. Maybe Jutta has a question first.
No, so I'll take it from here. So
Wait, Ellie, Jutta had a question? No?
No,
Okay.
I think that. So yes, we've been working with the International Commission on Zoological Nomenclature to draft an MOU between TDWG and this organization. The idea being that we can share our respective expertise. For example, for the ICZN, our work with BHL, our work with computers and publications, and our work with actors like Catalog of Life and the different taxonomic backbones that exist in biodiversity informatics are a set of skills and expertise that they would like to have access to. And in the opposite, the expertise of the commission around what nomenclature, around how to interpret, how to formalize nomenclatural data that we work around in TDWG. So, for example, with the taxon concept, or with or the way that we represent the data in our standards, such as Darwin Core, are regions where the commission might to help us to choose the right words, the right expressions, and the right and make sure that we do follow all the rules of the Code of Nomenclature. This is true. We started with zoology because this was my own bias when I decided to work with Patricia, but it is obvious that we will do everything that's possible to extend this work with the other nomenclatural bodies such as the ICN for botany, for example. And also just to tell about to say some words about what's going on right now. So the two MOUs are right now in the hands. So one MOU, but there's a version for the commission, a version for TDWG, are in the hand of the exec and the commission for any fine tuning and detail and changing some details in the text, so that we can hopefully by the end of this month for the commission, I can tell you the very exact date, the 24th of this month, the commission should have a vote to accept the fact that they will sign this MOU, and hopefully it's already been happening, or it's happening the same way with the TDWG exec. And we should have it come into effect fairly soon after these signatures. So that's what has been happening. It's a good experience. It's been met with a lot of enthusiasm by the commission. There have been some people that are a bit afraid of having a little bit too many regulations or too many orders coming from I'm talking about people in the commission, afraid from having too many orders coming from TDWG, but the MOUs are non-legally binding, and I think we have to always insist on the fact that it's a good faith move that has as an objective sharing our respective expertise as the main objective, and showing also the stakeholders that we are able to work with other international bodies.
Can I ask, Ellie?
Yes.
How is this related to the TCS standard that is now under review? Is it building on this? Yeah, I don't know.
It's more the TCS standards is a bit complicated as a subject, mostly because, at least for the commission, the zoological commission, the TCS has been done mostly by botanists. So I think the ICN might be a bit more into it, at least from what I've seen from the taxon concept standard. I might be wrong. I've just started reading reading it. Literally, I think 2 days ago, I started reading the new taxon concept 2.0. So hopefully what can happen is I can talk a little bit more about the Darwin Core side of things because I know it a little bit better, but there are some wording and some definitions, for example, that might be reworked if we are a little bit more if we pay a little bit more attention to the exact wordings in the code, when there are, for example, confusions between valid, which in zoology is equivalent to correct in botany, which applies to a name, not a taxon. So you have many places in the Darwin Core, for example, taxon that are considered valid, a taxon is accepted, not valid, and there are this kind of little fine tunings and stuff that the people from the commission will see very, very quickly and can very quickly point out that this is not the exact right vocabulary. Especially that we are going to get normally in the fall, if not next year, maybe the year after, a new version of the zoological code with some vocabulary change. So we might also have to adapt our own standards to stay in conformity with the new zoological code.
Well, maybe if I can add, in the MOU itself, we sort of decided to not be too technical. So we refer to very overarching general collaboration matters and agreements, but with the goal that they come in and then work exactly on what Ellie said within the different standards where taxonomy comes into picture. And the argument about botany comes back a lot because historically, since TEDWG started, it was started by botanists, and then the zoologic people came, and of course now it's also zoology, earth science, and so on. But historically, there are still controlled vocabulary that can clearly come from botany. And I think it would be a good move to have these zoological taxonomies come collaborate more exactly to add in the controlled vocabularies also the wording, because I think the concept itself is fine, but it's more in terms of controlled vocabulary. And also in general, what I sometimes notice that there is a confusion about the role of TEDWG. So some people confuse the quality of the content when a standard is used with the standard itself. So they have to understand that TEDWG is not responsible on how others are using the standards. They can give recommendation, they can give controlled vocabularies. But for example, if in GBIF there are errors in the data, it's the provider and it's not TEDWG. And that's something people sometimes overlook and they think it's all the responsibility of TEDWG. So this is also something we have to be clear where they have to go ask to change the data if they are not happy with the content versus the standard.
If I can add to what Patricia just said, it is true that it hasn't been that easy to explain what TADWIG does exactly. We are used to it because in biodiversity informatics, it's pretty self-evident what TADWIG is responsible for. But outside of it, it's fairly easy for the people we are reaching to confuse what TADWIG produces with what our historic collaborators, such as Catalog of Life, GBIF, etc., also produce. And they think it's the same thing, even though TADWIG is not responsible for Catalog of Life, for GBIF, etc. It's being able to really identify what is the particular work of TADWIG is sometimes the first step and not the easiest one in our discussions. So that the partners can really understand what we are responsible for.
So if there are further questions on that point, or if you have more general questions, we can also already come to our following point agenda where we ask more general expectations from TEDWG or your needs or why you came to this session. Yeah, Jutta.
I find it really great that TDWG has a partnership committee. So I like. So my experience is that it's actually very quickly becoming a full-time job to not only build partnerships but then maintain them. And yeah, so that is one concern I have. That I mean, quite some of you know kind of that I'm thinking about a new economic model for our community. And that is kind of like one of the reasons why I think, well, if you really want to move this forward, it's actually much more than a volunteer job. And I'm often thinking about the CBD, so the Convention on Biological Diversity and global monitoring, because really, as a community and also as TDWG, we should have been much more involved in developing the monitoring. It's I mean, it's a huge endeavor, and a standard would have been really helpful. So I was wondering what you were thinking about this.
Well, I think that's probably why my predecessor decided to have a subcommittee that joins both fundraising and partnership, because it's clear that it will need additional funding and resources. Now, we had several cases where TDWG, with the TDWG Europe branch, was part of EU projects. On one part, the positive side was that we were quite involved, more visible. Sometimes the people associated to TDWG were coming with numerous people to the events of those projects, which was quite an added value. But in terms of administration and workload for the executive and secretariat, it's really a challenge. So as opposed to other such international body, TDWG has not a hub for coordinating support office with paid staff. We have a few consultants that we pay a little bit, but we don't have a fully fledged secretariat, which we might need in future if we want to grow. But it's not easy because we have to start small, and it comes with a quite big administrative workload. Getting funding for travel and missions and participating to other stakeholders' event is one route. We tried for one project to also have staff that we paid and hired on projects, but for a very small association, it's very challenging also to hire staff, especially part-time. So we are also looking into a model where the institutions that are our members would perform more TDWG tasks, and that some of the funding they get via external sources could be devoted for TDWG activities. So this is currently in discussion between several institutions and the TDWG executive to see how this could best work. But meanwhile, we always keep an eye on funding opportunities and see to have TDWG on board in a way or another in the upcoming proposal. I'm used to EU projects, but we also want to look broader. Hence my plea to have also, for example, the TDWG regional representatives more active from the other continents that are also in the executive to help us identify such funding opportunities to have TDWG function more efficiently and faster. In the past, we had a grant from a foundation that was quite substantial, that helped setting up all these processes on standard review processes that we are still using now. And this could be done when we had really staff hired to set that in place. But when the foundation support stopped, we went back to how we can work mostly as volunteers. To wrap up a bit how it works.
I can add to that that in the case of partnerships between two association, if you'd like the commissions, for example, it makes it a little bit easier if you have people that are involved in both organization anyway, that would have been involved anyway in both organization. I'm an example of that, but I'm not the only one. There's a lot of people in the commission that are also fairly involved in TDWG. I can drop some names, but I don't want to make them feel pressured about anything. It's very easy to go to the commission website and see the list of commissioners, and I'm pretty sure some faces will be familiar because they are usually at TDWG's conferences at least once every couple years. So in those cases, it's a bit easier because you have people that are anyway going to work in between the two communities, and just it actually makes it a little bit easier to have partnerships because it gives us an institutional excuse to have time to make time to work with both the communities.
Then another interesting approach is also to a bit get rid of this volunteer tag of the work we are doing. Of course, there you need the approval of your hierarchy or your institution. But for example, for the staff at Nice Botanic Garden, we are allowed to pass some of our time for standards and TEDWG. And in our timesheets, we can allocate time that is done for TEDWG activities. So it's part of our work description. Of course, not full time. But in that sense, we are not volunteers fully anymore because our institution acknowledges this as our work. Whereas I know for others, they do that additionally to their actual tasks, and it's seen as additionally volunteer tasks, and it's not seen as what they are required to do officially from their institution. So the cases depend a lot depending on which institution and which people you consider. I don't know if yeah.
To respond to that, I think it's really great when institutions allow you to use part of your time on collaborating with TDWG, or like in what you described, that you're on both sides, so to say, and it's kind of like intuitive native to move between both organizations. And that is very, very much needed. What I'm concerned is, my impression is that TDWG has quite a big backlog on bigger tasks that actually would need to be done, and that you can't do kind of like on the side or on a small part-time contingent of your time. So that otherwise I'm completely happy with this model, and I think that that's really great, and that is a really good way to go about it. Just for like the big tasks that we are pushing kind of like ahead of us, like there it's a bit more difficult. Like I don't think it works very well.
Well, that's something we need to look into it with the executive and the members and so on. To what extent we want TEDWG to grow and have a fully fledged secretariat or coordinating support office that is paid, looking for a foundation or any substantial funding, or I don't know if we can increase the membership because it's already not so easy. So this is something to really discuss on a broader scope, I think, than this subcommittee alone. It's complete new vision and roadmap for TEDWG. And I'm sure we are all aware of what would be needed, but how to make it happen is another story. Well, I don't know, Raza, if you have any question or expectations.
Yeah, I actually very much agree with what Jutta has said. I also don't think this volunteering thing works in this age anymore because we all very much overloaded. And to have to work 150% per week, it's not going to happen. You are probably a very unique case and you're allowed to work for both sides. You are very lucky. But I think for majority of us, we cannot do that. So that is one thing. Another thing you was talking about the idea that your partners, your members will prioritize funding to pay for some work, public work. That is a nice idea, but in reality, as I'm working for Swedish biodiversity infrastructure, and I see how fundings are getting tighter and tighter every single funding period. So to expect that partners will prioritize TDWG, that is a little bit unrealistic, I would dare to say. So that is the second thing. And the third thing, I actually was wondering, GBIF. So you know the GBIF, they are very active, right? So I'm wondering, how often do you communicate with GBIF? How close do you work with GBIF? Do you discuss the standards? Because they're working a lot on the catalog of life, right? They're also working a lot on Darwin Core, and they thinking about some modification, right? So
Well,
how is the connection with GBIF?
yeah, well, GBIF is historically the body with whom we collaborate the most, and we have a permanent GBIF representative in the executive already for a very long time. So we have very regular meeting with them. TEDWG is also associated member of GBIF. We work together with their GBIF new data model, and they are also very much part of our working groups. So there we have really very regular contacts and work very closely together. I think our servers are also hosted at GBIF and so on. So it's those we work the closest together. And I think Ben has also things to add here.
I think you pretty much said most of it, but yeah, they funded they were the funding mechanism behind the new Darwin Core data package model. They work very intertwined with TDWG. There's not a fine line boundary. They have a different set of priorities and different things they have to address. Partnerships around the world, different hierarchy, different structure. But as far as two organizations working together, it's very, very close. The head of the Darwin Core maintenance group also was the primary architect of the Darwin Core data package data model, and same person. And so these all work in tangent with one another.
Yeah, thanks. Great. One more, DISCO. So
Yeah.
how much TDWG is involved in DISCO? Because that is very big European project, right? So how much involvement do you have in there?
Yeah, quite a lot because, for example, the Latimer core for the collection descriptors was developed within the DISCO Prepare and DISCO Transition EU project. So TEDWG is very much involved from the start in DISCO. Also, all the MITs, the minimum information on digital, are involved with digital sequences. So TEDWG is really involved in many aspects in DISCO. And this is an example where we concretely managed to have tasks performed for Disco with TEDWIC people on board. So, for example, my colleague Martin Trekkels from Meis Botanic Garden is directly involved in the development of Latimer Core, and he was partly paid on Disco funding to perform tasks for TEDWIC while working for the garden, where this was very much acknowledged. I know the colleagues from the London are in the same situation, from Naturalis. So most of the larger institutions who are involved in Disco, and if they are historically involved in TEDWIC, are doing tasks on the standards, and they're being also paid via EU projects to do this, and it's considered as the output of the institution they work for, but clearly towards TEDWIC and the community.
And I think so. My experience with Disco and the European Horizon big EU project is that TEDWIC allows the EU projects to be more international. So like you have an EU project that then does a TEDWIC working group to allow people from around the world to join the work and participate, which it's very, very nicely opening up the community and the development. That's one part I always thought works really well.
And so Disco is one of the large EU infrastructures, but others are also referring to TEDWIC standards such as Elixir or LifeWatch and so on. They have worked on the taxonomic backbone together with GBIF and the Catalog of Life and TEDWIC involved. So there has been historically a long-term collaboration between all these bodies. And I was also at the European Open Science Cloud meeting, where for the domain of biodiversity and natural sciences, they literally cited GBIF and TEDWIC as being the best available communities and standards up to now. So there we are known, and they really acknowledge our work. So there I would really go in the sense of Utah, as we have so many expectations and users, that we really need to find a way to have TEDWIC continuing and delivering what is expected. That's for sure, that we have to find solutions there, because we have indeed many expectations from our communities. But it can only work, I think, together with others and with the institutions, because the task is far too big to be covered by TEDWIC alone.
On that subject, I think insisting or talking about TEDWIC in our respective institutions is also a way of letting people know what we do in TEDWIC, and then why it's useful to give us some time on our work week to work on stuff like TEDWIC here in Paris, at least for I can talk for myself in GB France, because we are pretty much already involved in the international scale. It's pretty easy to explain to our superiors why we need time to work on stuff like TEDWIC, and it's not too hard to get time for this. So, for example, that's why I'm here. I'm technically at work, so so it kind of works, but it also we need to explain to our institutions what we are doing, why we are doing it, how it's reused, how it's useful, and how it also has an effect to how we work on a national scale. So, for example, GB France is hosted by Patrinat. Patrinat is the French structure or institution that has to do with anything on the national biodiversity scale, in the national biodiversity scale. So this work that we do in GBIF, even though because we are on the international scale, we are a bit different than our colleagues that usually only work on what's happening in France. It's not too hard to tell them that, well, the standards that we are developing is what it makes it possible for France, for example, to be the second biggest data publisher, data and GBIF. So we need to have something like Darwin Core to be able to send the data that our colleagues get in France and send them to GBIF. And this tends to work as a way to let the colleagues and the institution understand what and why we do the work we do with TDWG,
Yes,
at least on our level.
no. In Belgium, it's a bit the same situation. I would say this link that exists between GBIF and TDWG at international level, you have to make sure that your local GBIF node is also showing it at local level and how it can be useful for your researchers on a daily way or the people providing data online, how the standards are helpful to do their work and improve the data and so on, and having more data publicly available, etc. And also when you submit EU projects and so on, if you say that you are compliant or will use these standards, it also helps to get a better review and the chances to get funded. So it's also a question of visibility and communication at all levels, from the institution to the national to the international level. If there are more questions,
No,
I
I
have,
just
yeah.
I just found it quite funny.
Mhm.
What you said, it's quite logical, right? It's
Mhm.
normal. Visibility, more you're visible, more it's easier to get funding, basically.
Mhm.
And every researcher or collection manager should understand that, right? But in reality, they do not. Some of them, they are still very, very conservative and then very afraid to be more visible. So, yes, of course, but we still have many of researchers.
Mm.
Yeah, you are nodding me, right? It's I'm working at Swedish Museum of Natural History, right? So we have very big collections. And I can tell you that I don't know how many years, 10, 15 years, and only now, at the beginning of May, we're gonna have our first workshop in the museum about Darwin Core. Only now.
Mhm.
Yes,
So,
and here in France, we have the same issue. I always tend to joke about it, saying that the French always like to do their own stuff and not follow the international stuff, and it's really hard to get them. But what I've seen happen a lot is if you talk to people if you talk personally to people and you see why actually they don't agree with something, usually we already have in TDWG the answer to any of their fears. It's just they are afraid of stuff that don't exist. And most of the time but it's a real issue, and this is something I've been discussing with my colleagues here about if you want to present TDWG's work, because it's really hard to convince to make people who are working on their very particular field, their very particular subject, their very particular collection, understand what they can gain from getting involved in these massive international infrastructures that they don't really see what they might lose, which is the exclusivity on their data, for example. But they don't see what they can gain, which is a lot of visibility, a lot of and so sometimes using examples, showing examples like people who have been able to. So, for example, one that we've been talking about fairly recently with colleagues from another lab here is that in the Paris Herbarium we had, because thanks to GBIF, where we uploaded a lot of data from almost everything from the Paris Herbarium. We had a lot of corrections done to identifications because specialists of very obscure groups that we do not have in France see the data on GBIF, see that there are mistakes in identification on this very obscure Poaceae family or the small herbs, and are able to genus, and are able to then show that we need to review all the identification, something that would have never been seen if it was stopped and only located in the French at the French national level, because not on the international scale, it's really hard to get the colleagues to go and see what we create on the national scale. So sharing examples like this sometimes help, and there is a lot there are a lot of people who are afraid of change, afraid of embracing new, afraid of accepting things that they had no part in developing, for example, which is also something that comes again that I hear about Darwin Core, for example. So it's we are seeing change even here, even with the most traditionally with the people who are mostly traditionally in opposition to this change, are starting to change also because of another argument that works a lot, the critical mass of data, and the fact that people are now afraid mostly of getting left behind and not participating in those gigantic adventures. So that also is an argument that works well to get people on board, being like, you're the only one, you're going to be the only major collection that's not in it. And you realize that it's not going to look good on what you did in 10 or 15 years. So this is another argument that kind of works well to get people on board.
And the KPIs, the increase of number of specimens provided to GBIF, for example, is in our annual report for evaluations for our institution and also others. Also within the local implementation of DISCO, they ask to see how many more collection data are being provided online via GBIF, where we also use the TDWG standards. Now, I think we have all the researchers in our institutions that don't yet want to share their data or use standards that are others than their own. But this gradually diminishes, especially if the direction or the CEOs is convinced, and you have a bit of top-down request to make your data more open. We have many cases, being it for data or publication, if they are not openly published, there is no more funding. Or if you don't commit even to put them to GBIF, you don't get the proposal. You can submit proposal, but you cannot get funded anymore. So it's in the proposal that you have to provide all your data to GBIF or you can't even submit. So getting help like this pushes the people to use more the standards and publish their data. But of course, you always have some who remain reluctant. And then, of course, the trainings are very important, where I know our GBIF note redoes the GBIF trainings locally about data cleaning, about mapping your own data to the TDWG standards and so on, helping them to provide the data, even doing it for them if needed, if they can't do it themselves. And it's really going beyond the standards and the application that brings people convincing to do it. Because if they look at the standards alone without application, it's sometimes difficult to grasp for what they are useful for. But if you bring in the standard with the application and examples, you can have much more buy-in, I think.
Can I add a few things? I don't know how much time do we have?
I have leave it to 3:30, so you can go ahead.
Okay. Me too. So I have another session after that. So a few things about these big projects, as you both, Ellie and Patricia, mentioned. There is a little problem with that. When we're talking about big projects, it's usually very common that it involves meta-barcoding, right? And yet we're still not entirely ready to accept meta-barcoding data just yet. So we are behind. And all the projects which are done, I don't know, 5-10 years ago, they have a data, but they don't feel pressure to upload them. So we need to kind of convince them to do that. And my last thing, what I wanted to say, I don't know if you ever seen a cartoon movie about panda and bear talking about the data sharing. No? Okay, I'm gonna share it with you. It's very good. It's very, very painful, but it's very useful. And what I'm trying to say with that maybe this kind of educational information, very short cartoons to have in TDWG could be very useful for training. It should be like few minutes, not longer, but they are the most efficient. I can share that. So that could be very little investment if we have a student who likes drawing or playing with AI. So
Belgium is a country of comics books, and there we have several who already did a small comic book to explain the things. Ellie saw them for IPBES, for example. So this is something indeed that is quite interesting to have this kind of short videos. You can surely share it.
So I, and as we are having a workshop beginning of May, I'm gonna start my presentation with this cartoon. So it's very clear. Why do we need it? Why do we need standards? Why do we need shared data? So when you have time, please look at it. It's quite painful, but it's very, very true. So if TDWG can think of it and create similar cartoons, I think it could be useful to have it.
Well, TDWG has a YouTube channel, so if we have some motivated people, we can see to do something fun. We can discuss it. But again, this is something who also asks to do it nicely. You need also time and resources and someone
Yeah,
who
that's
is
why
creative.
I'm suggesting students. If you have a master student or PhD student, ask them, because they're usually quite they're looking for a reason not to do their job. So here we are.
We have another committee of TDWG which is on outreach and communication, where we can surely discuss it with them. And I agree to do something a bit fun has an impact. That's I agree. Viso?
I put it in the chat. I just wanted to mention that there is a standard mapping Darwin core to MIXES standards for genomic sequences. So we are on the way to have something. I mean, the standard is already there, so we can use it. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And the eDNA working group?
It's starting right now.
No? I thought it's in half an hour.
I think I have it at 3, but maybe let me check.
I had it at 3:30, but
really? So it's probably me. So I can stay then.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm joining
Let me
that
check.
group as well.
No, you're right. You're right.
Okay. Yeah. So it's one of the outputs of this MOU we have between TDWG and the Genome community, molecular community. So this task group on eDNA and also on material sample and the other standards that I showed as an example in the beginning. So there is quite some going on. And we also had an EU project called DNAquanet, where we had participants coming and where we also looked into the ISO standards and CEN and so on at EU level at the TDWG standards and how we can collaborate. One of the things is the ISO standards are not open and you have to pay sometimes quite a lot to use them and to be accredited. So we are finding way to collaborate, but for the moment we are a bit reluctant for TEDWIC to become ISO standards because we want to remain open to the community. And the colleagues from DN Aquanet also said if you want to remain inclusive and global, these ISO standards that they are now looking in DNA with the CEN and so on, many developing countries don't have the means to implement them and to be accredited. So in parallel, they want to keep together with us open standards that are a bit the same, even if not ISO accredited, to keep it feasible and open for and inclusive for everyone. But there is a lot of going on in the molecular aspects. And together with Pensoft, we also have created a journal, especially on metagenomics, a bit the same as the BIS journal for TEDWIC and so on. It was a bit at the same time. So there is quite a lot going on in the genetic aspects, if you want.
Good.
Okay. I don't know if there are any more remarks or questions. Else I had a small point to have their views on how you see the next steps for this group.
Yes. Our question would have been, do you have any idea of a partnership we could engage in or another with an association or with another society, scientific society that might be interested in what we do with Stadwig? Because it's always easier if you have someone who is connected to this organization. But or even just as an idea on the paper for now, waiting that we might find someone who might be a good bridge between communities.
Well, Raza, you mentioned CBD. Do you think we could?
Well, SBDI is Swedish, but it's a national, right, biodiversity infrastructure. Where they are part of TIDWIC and we are following the standards. So I don't really know what would be the result of partnership. I mean, just to have a paper, I don't also, I don't see it yet.
It's okay. It's
Convince me.
okay if you don't have a name right now, but maybe in doing your work you will find someone or something or an organization that you might think, oh, that would be nice if Tadwig could work with them on this and this very particular questions that we have been unable to find a solution for on that scale. So it's this is a bit how it happened for the nomenclatural bodies. I've listened to the people from the commission complain about issues like registration that I did not mention, for example. And this is something that has been an issue for zoology for a long time, registering new names, registering publications. And because there wasn't now the commission changed a little bit, but there wasn't a lot of people with biodiversity informatics or databasing skills. So if you hear or see organizations that might benefit from the set of skills that TADWIG usually can provide, that can be good. They can be good candidates for a partnership. especially if they can also provide something to TADWIG and expertise, in particular also if it's something that is being discussed and is a bit on is a bit of an issue for TADWIG too. So keep an open mind, keep an open eye. It's I'm pretty sure there's a lot more than what we think about.
But there is this conference in Colombia, right? End of October.
Yes.
So majority of you gonna be there, I assume, right? So that is a very good hunting ground for a new partner, right? Also, it could be a perfect time because I'm also representing Living Atlas community. Are you aware of it? Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm gonna use that event also to physically meet the members of Living Atlas community and work on the action plans. Because Zoom meetings, they're good, but they never replace the physical meetings. So I'm just an idea throwing out there to you to organize physical meeting and hunt for the partners.
Yeah. Well, one of the reasons to organize it together with GeoBond is also to collaborate more with these communities. And we are also looking in monitoring larger projects in the US, like NEON and so on, to collaborate also. So these are ongoing discussions, but which indeed needs to be more formalized and pushed forward. What I also get often is from the policymakers like IPAS and others that they would like the data from the scientists processed in a way that they can be directly used and useful for policy and decision making. I'm not sure if TEDWIG can play a role there because it's more about transformation of the content than the standard, but something we may reflect with controlled vocabulary or something, because that's not our usual direct target audience, more indirect. So, and
Not
then
sure if I agree with
yeah.
that. I, I, I would actually think that that is something that TEDWIG should rise up to the challenge. And it is really, I mean, this is kind of, I think, my impression, that's a hypothesis that I'm going to throw out also in other meetings, is that some of the difficulties we have, both with developing standards, but also by users, how users use the standards, is that we are not doing the step towards ontologies and vocabularies. And you need ontologies to have vocabularies, really, because you start to get into meaning. And I thought that my hypothesis would be, if we would have a full ontology and fully developed vocabularies and the machinery around that allows people to also add all the odd things in that you cannot capture in a vocabulary, that then we actually the use of the standards would be much better, kind of like with regard to data. And they might also be picked up much more easily. So I think it's a bit too easy to say this is not our thing to do. I think it is we, as TEDWIG, need to do our part to close that gap.
Yeah. So one hot topic is also how to use more and more artificial intelligence in extracting data from text or online into TEDWIG standards. or the other way around. So that needs to be further explored. We learned from Visoteri that with the SDD standards, you did some trials to use artificial intelligence. So this is also some area we can explore to have like agreements or with people more in the IT sector and so on.
Also, Utah, I just wanted to mention that there is a new working group, task group on realm and biome, and they are going to explore an extension to Darwin Core using ontologies for environmental. So
Okay.
that's might be a way going into ontologies.
What was the topic?
It's realm and biome,
Realm
and
and
it's
okay,
yeah,
yeah.
it's a new
Mhm,
task group.
okay. Mhm.
I can put it
Yeah.
in a chat.
It was founded, yeah, it was announced in the last conference, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And it's one of the conveners is Pierluigi Buttigieg, and he's the one of the author of the environmental ontology. So he's part of that group.
So would you envisage that we have a presentation about this subcommittee at the next TEDWG meeting, or
Is it a question for me?
well, in general? No, I mean in general about the subcommittee.
Oh, sorry.
You think the subcommittees should ambition to make a presentation at the next TEDWG meeting in Colombia, or should this be more discussion between executive group and expand the group? Because we have also ideas for more targeted technical presentations. A bit hesitant about having a more administrative topic as a presentation, but it could be.
But if you're talking about presentation in Colombia, sorry, my dogs are fighting behind me. Hey, so what exactly you would like to present?
Well, for the moment, it's more brainstorming. So we
Because
could
that is
present
very
eventually examples of MOUs or more in-depth if the case with the nomenclatural body has evolved by then. That could be, for example, a presentation. And then as a case study of this subcommittee, but focusing really on that aspect. And then having, by the way, at the end of the slide that we are looking for more partners and other groups. So that could be an idea, but I don't want to put too much pressure on Ellie's shoulders.
No, but I'm just I don't want to be rough, but I think it's very important that we ask these questions to ourselves. What do we want to achieve with that presentation in that setting? We want to be more visible. Do we want to find more collaborations? Do we want to raise awareness? What do we want? What is our goals?
I'd say it's a bit of everything, I'm guessing. And it might be a good occasion to at least make people aware that we exist, which is already a challenge, and that we are working on these partnerships, because I can talk about myself here. Personally, I didn't know that we had, well, before talking with Patricia and joining the subcommittee, I wasn't aware of most of the partnerships that TDWG already had. So I discovered most of it after joining the subcommittee and discussing with Patricia and discovering that, oh, this exists and this has been done and this also has been done. So I think it's a bit of, yes, this works, this exists, and it works, and we had this already has been already done. It already resulted in this, and I think it's also a good occasion to show people because we are used in conferences to show results, and not that much to show how we got there, like how in detail, how technically how we get there. We can show how the scientifically we got there, but how technically, how humanly we get there with all the technical issues that might arise and all the human difficulties that it might that we got through. That might be also an occasion. I don't know if it's going to be perfect a perfect fit for this year's conference, but having a presentation or something about it is probably, if not this year, maybe next year. But it's something that I think personally we should work on to at least make people aware that this is happening and they can help and maybe they are can be get involved because it's the standards are getting visible in TADVIC, but the internal structure of the subgroups in TADVICs are not always that easy to get to if you're not if you don't do a lot of work yourself to get involved in that.
Well, I have to cross-check because the schedule is not there yet for Colombia. But in previous year, we always had like a last session at the end where the conveners of task group and working groups present could have like a 5-minute speech where they could present shortly their working group and their next step. So if this is happening, I will anyhow have 5 minutes to present the subcommittee and its progress in a nutshell and ask for more ideas of collaboration. But if that's not happening, then we have to see to get in one of the sessions. But I can find out with the organizer what is planned.
I would like to hear more, not the progress. Well, progress sounds important, but I would like to hear the importance of this committee. I think that is much more powerful. What our job, it's very important. This committee is very important. That's what I would like to hear in that conference.
Okay, it's noted.
Good. We will see to. If you have just 5 minutes, we will see to have this as the main message. Thank you for this. That's really good. I hope I can go physically to Colombia and do it. We have to see how it works with the funding because it's not that easy.
But should we try to summarize today?
Yes.
So one of the action plans I hear very clearly is the presentation in Colombia, right? The importance of this group, of this committee, with the good examples and the progress. What is the next step?
Well, as said, for the moment, it's only Ellie and me. So we would be happy to hear if others were interested to join our group. So as said, we plan to meet every 3 months, so not to make it too heavy, and then ad hoc meetings if something news come up, because being just the two of us is certainly not enough. So we would be happy to have a bit more members. I also asked the people from the regional representation if they could contribute more. We already got some input, notably from the Asian representative, about some opportunities that we can pursue. So that would be one of the goals. And then, of course, this registry of stakeholders to make this list and see how we can expand it. But I'm speaking now here really for the partnership part, because the fundraising part is another piece of cake that needs even much more efforts and time.
And on the partnership side also, hopefully we should get the MOU with the ACZN done fairly soon, and then continue with the other nomenclatural bodies. Hoping that with one already done, it will make it easier and smoother for the others. And this is probably what's going to be on the very next step for in practice what gets to be done by the committee. Then if we have any other idea, or someone sends us an idea or is willing to participate and propose a new partner, we will work on it to see how we can expand TDWG's horizons.
And one concrete thing going on also in the genetic part is that IBOL, the International Barcode of Life, together with IBOL Europe, would like to do a MOU with the Genome Biodiversity Standards and GGBN, where we should have a meeting together, bringing also TDWG, so that they are aware of the existing MOU. And we will discuss if we cannot add simply IBOL to the existing MOU instead of doing a new one, or if they really need a new one bilateral between themselves and then with us again, or if we should not have one together. So I can keep colleagues posted when this meeting is going to happen. We were going to look it after the Easter break, because the people from genetics couldn't be here because they were on holiday for Easter, but they were really interested to expand that MOU with new actors in the molecular realm. So I think that's already a lot on our plate. So if any of the two people here would like to join our group, don't hesitate to let us know. Or if you know colleagues who are interested, don't hesitate to tell us. Any last question or word? Else I can give you 10 minutes of your life back and to go to the next session, which is about eDNA and should interest several of us. But I thank you a lot for having been here, and we keep certainly in touch. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks. Bye.
So